I'm Sadie, 32, living in a quiet Ohio town. 6 months ago, my world stopped when Nathan, my husband, died in a car crash. Our house feels empty now, his laughter gone, but his garage, that locked space he never let me enter, haunts me most. I hear his whistle in my dreams, echoing from that forbidden place. I decided to sell it to let go of the pain, but what I found inside changed everything. Have you ever faced a loss that left you searching for answers? Like if you have, and subscribe to hear what I discovered. I sat at my kitchen table, the morning light slicing through the blinds, casting stripes across the realtor's business card. Karen's name stared back at me, bold and black, promising a fresh start. My fingers hovered over my phone, but my chest tightened. Selling Nathan's garage felt like erasing him. He'd spent hours there, the door always locked, his tools clanging like a secret language I wasn't allowed to learn. I dialed Karen, my voice shaky. She answered with a cheerful lilt, talking market trends and quick sales. I nodded along, barely listening, my eyes on the keychain I'd found in his jacket pocket yesterday, a tiny wrench charm dangling, the one he'd twirl when he fixed my old sedan years ago, back when we were just dating. His grin had lit up my world then. Now it just hurt. Karen's voice pulled me back. She wanted to see the garage tomorrow. I agreed, but my stomach churned. Was I betraying him? The phone rang again as I set it down. Rachel, Nathan's sister, her name flashing like a warning. I answered, bracing myself. Her voice was sharp, like she'd been waiting to pounce. She said the garage was Nathan's legacy, that selling it was like throwing away his memory. I gripped the keychain tighter, my knuckles whitening. I tried to explain my words, stumbling, that I needed to move on, that the house felt like a tomb. Rachel scoffed, her tone biting, saying I never understood what the garage meant to him. I wanted to ask what she knew, why she cared so much, but her words stung too deep. She hung up before I could push back. I sat there staring at the dusty blinds, the wrench charm cold in my hand. Something about her voice felt wrong, like she was hiding something. I stood pacing the kitchen, the floor creaking under my feet. The garage loomed in my mind, its locked door a wall between me and Nathan's truth. Why had he been so secretive? I'd always trusted his need for space, but now, with Rachel's words echoing, doubt crept in. I grabbed my coat, the keychain still in my hand, and headed outside. The garage stood at the edge of our yard, its faded red paint peeling like old wounds. I touched the lock, my fingers trembling. I didn't have the key, but I needed answers. Rachel's possessiveness, Nathan's rules, the wrench charm, they all felt like pieces of a puzzle I couldn't see. I turned back to the house, my heart pounding, knowing I'd have to face that garage soon, whether I was ready or not. The wind picked up, rustling the overgrown grass, and I shivered, not from the cold, but from the weight of what I might find. I noticed the mailbox stuffed with unopened bills, a reminder of the life I was still avoiding. My neighbor Harper waved from across the street. Her garden gloves muddy, her face etched with a quiet grief I recognized. She'd lost her husband years ago, and her small nod felt like a shared understanding. I waved back, forcing a smile, but my mind was on that locked door. I glanced at the oak tree in our yard, its branches heavy with new leaves, a stark contrast to the stillness inside me. Harper called out, asking if I'd join her for coffee later, her voice a faint lifeline. I nodded, unsure if I'd go, my thoughts tethered to the garage's secrets. A sparrow landed on the mailbox, its chirp sharp in the morning quiet, and I watched it, wishing I could fly away from the weight of it all. The next morning I stood outside the garage, the key Nathan kept hidden now heavy in my palm. My breath caught as I slid it into the lock, the click echoing like a gunshot in the quiet yard. The door creaked open, revealing a dim, cluttered space. Dust swirled in the air, and the sharp smell of oil hit me. Shelves sagged with tools, car parts scattered like forgotten promises. I stepped inside, my shoes scuffing the concrete, heart racing. I wasn't supposed to be here. Nathan's rule had been clear: stay out. But he was gone, and I needed to know why this place mattered so much. I moved deeper, my hands brushing rusted wrenches and oily rags. Under a tarp in the corner, I found a heavy metal box, its lock stubborn and unyielding. I tugged at it, but it wouldn't budge. Frustration bubbled up. Why was everything in here a secret? I scanned the shelves, desperate for a key, when my eyes caught a glint in an open toolbox. Tucked inside was a faded photo. Not of us, but of Nathan, with a woman I'd never seen. She was laughing, her hand on his arm, his smile brighter than I'd seen in years. My stomach twisted. Who was she? I clutched the photo, my fingers trembling, jealousy flaring even as I hated myself for it. Maybe she was a cousin, a friend. But the way he looked at her felt too familiar, too intimate. The crunch of gravel snapped me out of it. Karen's car pulled into the driveway, her heels clicking as she approached. I shoved the photo into my pocket, my face burning. She stepped into the garage, her eyes sweeping the chaos with a realtor's optimism. She talked about square footage and potential buyers, but her voice faded as I stared at the metal box. She noticed my silence and softened, telling me about her brother's death, how she sold his things too soon and regretted it. Her words were kind, but they only deepened my unease. I nodded, barely responding, my mind on the photo, the box, Nathan's secrets. Karen left, promising to return with a buyer, but I hardly heard her. I sank onto a stool, the photo heavy in my pocket. Rachel's words from yesterday rang in my ears, her insistence that I keep the garage, her strange protectiveness. Did she know about this woman? The air felt thick, the walls closing in. I needed answers, but every step into this garage felt like stepping into a life I didn't know. The locked box sat there mocking me, and I knew I couldn't stop now. Whatever Nathan was hiding, I had to find it, even if it broke me. I noticed a small tarnished oil can on a shelf, one Nathan used to fiddle with during late-night talks. I picked it up, its weight familiar, and noticed a faint scratch on its base, like a code I couldn't read. Harper's voice called from outside, asking if I needed help. I shook my head, my focus narrowing. The garage wasn't just a space, it was a vault, and I was starting to see its cracks. I stepped outside briefly, the morning dew dampening my shoes, and saw Harper tending her roses, her hands steady despite her own losses. Her resilience stirred something in me, a faint whisper to keep going, but the photo in my pocket pulled me back to the garage, its secrets louder than her kindness. A faint breeze carried the scent of her flowers, and I lingered, the oil can still in my hand, its cold metal grounding me as I braced for what came next. I sat on the living room couch, the photo from the garage crumpled in my hand. The woman's smile burned into me, her hand on Nathan's arm, a silent accusation. My coffee was cold, untouched, as I stared at my phone, Rachel's number glaring back. I needed to know who this woman was, why she was with my husband in a moment I'd never shared. My thumb hovered, then pressed call. Rachel picked up on the second ring, her voice tight, like she'd been expecting me. I didn't ease into it. I asked about the woman, my words sharp, the photo trembling in my grip. Rachel paused too long, then said it was just an old friend from college, someone Nathan hadn't seen in years. Her tone was too smooth, like she'd rehearsed it. I pressed harder, asking why he kept her picture hidden. She snapped, saying I was digging up ghosts, that I should let Nathan rest. Her dismissal stung like a slap I didn't see coming. I hung up my chest tight with anger. Rachel knew something, and her lies were unraveling me. I grabbed Nathan's old phone from the drawer, the one I hadn't touched since he died. My hands shook as I powered it on the screen, flickering to life. I scrolled through his texts, my heart pounding. There was a number labeled J No Name, just a string of messages from last year. They mentioned the garage project, cryptic phrases like, "Meet me there and don't tell her." My breath caught. Her. Me. I read on each word a knife. The last message from Jay said, "Keep it quiet. It's almost done." I dropped the phone, my vision blurring. Nathan had been hiding something big, something he shared with this Jay, not me. I felt like a fool loving a man who kept a whole world locked away. The doorbell rang, pulling me from my spiral. It was Lucas, my neighbor, holding a toolbox, offering to help clear the garage. His kind eyes softened when he saw my face, and I let him in too raw to hide my pain. We sat at the kitchen table, the photo between us. I didn't show it to him, but my silence screamed. Lucas didn't push. Just shared a story about his dad hiding gambling debts, how it tore his family apart. His voice was steady, but his words hit hard, mirroring my own betrayal. I nodded, barely speaking, my mind stuck on Nathan's texts. As Lucas left, he squeezed my shoulder, saying I'd find my way through. But I wasn't so sure. Back in the garage, I found a folded note in Nathan's toolbox, his handwriting unmistakable. "Keep it hidden for her sake," it read. No name, no explanation. My anger flared. Who was he protecting, not me? I clutched the note, my heart pounding, knowing I couldn't stop digging now. I paced the living room, the note's edges digging into my palm. The house felt smaller, the walls pressing in with every unanswered question. I opened a drawer, finding an old pocket knife Nathan used to carry, its blade dulled but heavy with memory. I turned it over, noticing faint initials carved into the handle, not ours but someone else's, maybe Jay's. My stomach twisted. I set it down, my hands trembling, and glanced out the window. Harper was watering her roses, her movements slow, deliberate. She'd once told me about finding her husband's hidden letters, how they broke her, but taught her to rebuild. Her story echoed in me now, a faint spark of resolve. I needed to know more, but the garage felt like a maze, each step leading to a new dead end. I walked to the window, the glass cool against my forehead, and watched Harper kneel in her garden, her hands gentle with the soil. Her quiet strength stirred something in me, a reminder that pain could lead somewhere, but the note in my hand felt heavier, its mystery pulling me back to the garage. I noticed a small framed sketch on the wall, one Nathan drew of our old car, its lines faded but precise. It was a relic of happier days now, a reminder of how much I'd missed. I stood in the garage, the note still crumpled in my fist, its words burning in my mind. The air was thick with dust, the shelves looming like silent witnesses. I tossed the note aside and started searching my hands, frantic, pulling open drawers, shoving aside greasy rags. I needed something, anything, to explain Nathan's secrets. My fingers grazed a leather journal tucked behind a stack of old manuals, his initials embossed on the cover. It was locked, a tiny padlock mocking me. I tugged at it, my frustration boiling, but it wouldn't give. My breath hitched a sob, threatening to escape. Why was everything he left behind sealed shut, keeping me out even now? The doorbell rang sharp and jarring. I froze, journal in hand, then shoved it into my sweater. It was Rachel, unannounced, her face tight with accusation. She stepped inside without asking, her eyes darting to the open garage door. She didn't waste time, her voice low and cutting. She said I was ruining Nathan's memory, digging through his things like some stranger. I snapped back, my voice shaking, asking why she was so desperate to protect his secrets. Her eyes widened, but she didn't answer, just crossed her arms. I pressed, demanding to know what she wasn't telling me. She shouted that I was selfish, that I never deserved him. The words hit like a fist, stealing my breath. I staggered back, the journal heavy against my chest. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. It was Karen, her voice clipped, saying a buyer Marcus was pushing hard to see the garage today. She mentioned his insistence, how he kept asking about the space like it held something specific. My mind raced. What did Marcus know? I told Karen to stall him, my voice sharper than I meant. She hesitated, then agreed, but I could hear her unease. I hung up, Rachel still glaring at me. I wanted to scream, to demand she tell me everything, but her silence was a wall. I turned back to the garage, my eyes on a dusty model car on a shelf, one Nathan promised we'd build together. We never did. My chest ached, betrayal sinking deeper. Rachel left without another word, and I stood alone, the journal's lock cold against my skin, my anger and pain choking me. I lingered in the garage, the journal's weight pulling at my thoughts. A faint hum came from the street where Harper was trimming her hedges, her shears snipping rhythmically. I stepped outside, needing air, and she looked up, her eyes kind but probing. She asked if I was okay, her voice soft, like she saw the storm in me. I mumbled something vague, but her gaze held mine steady, like she'd walked this path. Back inside, I noticed a small brass tag on the journal's cover, etched with a date from 3 years ago when Nathan started pulling away. My fingers traced at a new clue, but the lock held firm, taunting me. I set it down, my resolve fraying the model car, staring back like a broken promise. The sky outside darkened, clouds rolling in, mirroring the storm in my chest. I found a small chipped mug on a shelf, one Nathan used for his coffee during late nights here. I held it, its handle worn smooth, and felt a pang of loss, not just for him, but for the trust I'd given so freely. A neighbor, Abigail, walked by, her dog tugging at its leash, and waved her smile, brief but warm. I nodded back, the mug heavy in my hands, grounding me as I faced the locked journal. The garage was dark, lit only by a flickering bulb that buzzed overhead. I crouched by the metal box, my crowbar wedged against its lock. My hands shook, slick with sweat, as I leaned into it, the metal groaning until it snapped open with a sharp clank. I lifted the lid, my breath shallow, expecting tools or more car parts. Instead, I found stacks of letters, yellowed photos, and a folder of legal papers. My fingers fumbled, pulling out a letter addressed to Nathan in a woman's looping handwriting. Elise, it was signed. My heart stopped. I read each word, a shard of glass. She wrote about their nights together, how they planned to leave to start over somewhere new, away from me. I dropped the letter, my hands trembling, and grabbed the folder. Inside were bank statements, a second mortgage on our house taken out without my name. Hundreds of thousands hidden from me. I sank to the concrete, the papers scattering around me. Nathan hadn't just kept secrets. He'd built a whole life without me. The photos showed him with Elise, her face the same as the one from the toolbox, laughing in places I'd never been. One letter mentioned a gift he was working on in the garage, something special for her and me. My chest burned, a scream trapped inside. How could he? I'd loved him through every fight, every late night he spent here thinking he was fixing cars, not planning to leave. The bulb flickered, casting shadows that felt like they were closing in. I grabbed my phone to text Lucas, needing someone, anyone to anchor me. But I stopped, my fingers frozen. This pain was mine alone. I stood, my legs shaky, and rifled through more letters. One mentioned a project, something big he was hiding for Elise's future. My eyes stung, tears blurring the words. The mortgage papers showed payments I never knew about, our home at risk because of his lies. I clutched a photo of him smiling with her, my nails digging into the edges. The garage, his sacred space, was a shrine to his betrayal. I wanted to burn it all, to erase every trace of him. But I couldn't move, rooted by the weight of it all, my heart shattering as the truth sank in. I noticed a small wooden box on a shelf carved with intricate patterns, unlike Nathan's usual rough work. I opened it, finding a single key, old and tarnished, with no label. It didn't fit the metal box, but its presence felt like another secret, another door I couldn't open. The bulb buzzed louder, and I sat there surrounded by his lies, my world crumbling. Harper's voice drifted through the open door, humming a tune as she swept her porch. I envied her calm, her ability to carry on. I set the key down, my hands shaking, and noticed a faint inscription on the box, a date from our first anniversary, a memory now tainted by Elise's shadow. A faint rain began to patter on the garage roof, its rhythm steady but cold, mirroring the ache in my chest. Morning light spilled into the living room, but it felt cold, like it was mocking me. I sat cross-legged on the floor, the letters and photos spread out like a crime scene. My hands trembled as I dialed the number I'd found in one of Elise's letters, my heart pounding so loud it drowned out the birds outside. A woman answered, her voice soft but unmistakable. Elise. I choked out Nathan's name and she went quiet, then admitted she'd been with him, loved him, until he ended it a year ago. She said he stayed for me, that he felt guilty. My throat tightened, rage and grief colliding. He'd chosen me, but only after breaking me. I hung up my hands, shaking, when my phone buzzed. Rachel's voice was frantic, confessing she'd known about Elise all along, sworn to Nathan to keep quiet. She begged me to understand, said it was to protect me. Protect me. Her betrayal cut deeper than his, a knife twisted by family. The doorbell rang, sharp and insistent. It was Karen with Marcus, the buyer, his eyes scanning me like he knew my pain. He pressed about the garage, his voice too eager, saying it was perfect for his plans. I barely listened, my mind reeling from Rachel's words. How could she hide this? My best friend, my sister-in-law, carrying Nathan's secret while I mourned him. I found a half-finished letter in the pile, Nathan's handwriting shaky, addressed to me. "I'm sorry, Sadie," it read. "I never meant to hurt you." He never sent it. My chest caved, the weight of his regret useless now. Marcus kept talking, but his words blurred. I saw a glint in his eyes, like he knew more than he let on. My world was unraveling, every truth a fresh wound. I stood, the letter falling from my hands, my heart a hollow shell, drowning in betrayal, with no way out. I wandered to the kitchen, my bare feet cold against the tile. A photo of Nathan and me hung on the fridge, taken at a county fair, his smile wide as he held a cotton candy. I'd forgotten that day, how we'd laughed until our sides hurt. Now it felt like a lie. I touched the frame, my fingers lingering, then turned away. Harper's voice drifted through the window, chatting with a delivery man, her tone light. I envied her ease, her ability to move on. My phone buzzed again, a text from an unknown number, just a single line. "The garage holds more than you think." No signature. My pulse quickened. Was it Marcus? Someone else? I stared at the message, the weight of Nathan's secrets pressing harder, my resolve to face them flickering but not gone. I stepped outside, the air damp with morning mist, and saw Harper sorting through her mail, her face calm. She waved, offering a small smile, and I nodded back, clutching the letter, my heart heavy but determined to keep going. I noticed a small hand-stitched bookmark on the counter, one Nathan made during a craft fair. We attended, its threads frayed but vibrant. It felt like a relic of a life I'd lost, and I held it, my fingers tracing its edges, grounding myself for the fight ahead. I stood in the garage, the scattered letters and photos at my feet, their weight crushing me. Marcus's voice still echoed from yesterday, his pushy tone nagging at me. Enough. I wasn't letting him or anyone control this anymore. I grabbed my phone and texted Karen, my fingers steady for the first time in days. I told her to hold off Marcus, that I needed answers before selling. She replied quickly, confused but agreeing. I turned to the metal box, its contents spilling out like Nathan's lies. I started sorting the papers, my hands methodical, separating bank statements from Elise's letters. The second mortgage stared back, a financial noose, but I wasn't running from it. I'd figure it out. Marcus's insistence gnawed at me. He'd been too focused on the garage, his eyes darting to the far corner during his visit. I followed his gaze, now noticing a patch of wall behind a stack of tires, slightly discolored. My heart raced. I shoved the tires aside, my arms straining, and found a hidden panel barely noticeable. My fingers pried at it, revealing a small safe embedded in the concrete, its lock gleaming. Another secret. I didn't have the combination, but I wasn't stopping now. I grabbed a flashlight, scanning the shelves for any clue, my resolve hardening. Lucas knocked on the open garage door, his toolbox in hand. I didn't flinch, just waved him in. His eyes widened at the mess, but he didn't ask questions. I told him about Marcus, how his pushiness felt off, and the safe I'd just found. Lucas nodded, his calm grounding me. He said he'd done some accounting for his dad's business, offered to look at the mortgage papers. I handed them over, grateful, my trust in him growing. He sat on a crate, flipping through the documents, his brow furrowed. I kept searching the shelves, my fingers brushing a dusty notebook. No lock this time, just Nathan's scrawl. I opened it, my breath catching, knowing whatever was inside would change everything again. I paused, the notebook heavy in my hands. The garage's silence felt alive, like it was watching me. I glanced outside, where Harper was sweeping her porch, her movements steady, grounding. I remembered her telling me about finding peace after her husband's death, how she planted a garden to feel alive again. Her words stuck with me, a quiet push to keep going. I flipped through the notebook, finding sketches of car parts, random numbers, but nothing clear. My eyes caught on a small faded receipt taped to a page for a hardware store in a town an hour away. It was dated 2 years ago, when Nathan's late night started. I set it aside, my mind racing, the safe's lock glinting in the corner, daring me to keep digging. I stepped outside briefly, the grass damp underfoot, and noticed Harper's garden vibrant with new blooms. She looked up, offering a wave, and I felt a flicker of strength, but the notebook pulled me back, its pages whispering of secrets I was only beginning to unravel. I noticed a small leather keychain on a hook one Nathan used to carry its stitching frayed. I held it, its texture rough, and felt a surge of determination, the garage's shadows no longer daunting, but a challenge I was ready to face. I flipped open Nathan's notebook, the pages brittle under my fingers. It wasn't a journal, but a ledger filled with numbers and dates, tracking payments to a contractor for something called the Cabin Project. My heart thudded. A cabin, I kept reading, Lucas still poring over the mortgage papers beside me. The ledger mentioned a property an hour away, bought in secret. I looked up, my voice steady, and told Lucas I needed to know more about this cabin. He nodded, suggesting we check public records at the library. I felt a spark of purpose pulling me forward. I wasn't just a widow drowning in grief anymore. I was done being a victim of Nathan's secrets. I called a locksmith, Samuel, from a number on the fridge, my voice firm as I booked him for tomorrow to open the safe. No more waiting. Rachel texted, her words desperate, begging me not to touch the safe, saying it held things I wouldn't understand. I stared at her message, my jaw tight. She'd hidden enough. I deleted it, my fingers decisive. Lucas glanced up, noticing my shift. He didn't pry, just handed me a page from the mortgage documents, pointing out irregular withdrawals Nathan made. We'd figure it out together, he said. His quiet support felt like a lifeline, but I knew this fight was mine. Karen called, her tone tense, saying Marcus was furious, threatening to sue if I delayed the sale. I cut her off, my voice sharp, telling her I wasn't selling until I knew the truth. She hesitated, then said she'd handle him. I hung up my resolve, ironclad. I walked to the library with Lucas, the spring air cool against my skin. Inside, Nora, the librarian, greeted us, her glasses slipping down her nose. I explained the cabin, and she led us to the records computer, her voice soft as she shared how her husband once hid a debt from her. Her story steadied me, a reminder I wasn't alone. As we searched, my eyes locked on a deed, my breath catching. The cabin was real, and I was going to find it. I stood, my hands steady, ready to face whatever Nathan left behind. At the library, Nora offered me a cup of tea, her hands wrinkled but gentle. We sat briefly, her eyes kind, as she spoke of rebuilding after loss, how she'd found solace in small routines like knitting. Her words were simple but heavy, grounding me as Lucas typed at the computer. The deed's details emerged, confirming the cabin's location. But a new detail caught my eye. A cosigner, not a lease, but a man named Victor, unknown to me. My mind spun. Who was he? Another secret. I jotted down the address. My hands steady, but my thoughts racing, the library's quiet hum urging me forward. Outside, the sky was clearing, sunlight breaking through, and I noticed Nora's small garden by the library, its flowers vibrant. She mentioned planting it after her husband's death, a way to mark time. Her quiet resilience echoed in me, pushing me to keep searching, even as Victor's name lingered, a new shadow in Nathan's maze. I glanced at a small, woven bracelet on Nora's wrist. A gift from her late husband, she said, and felt a pang, my own resolve sharpening as I clutched the deed's address. I stood in the garage, the air heavy with the scent of old paint, as Samuel the locksmith worked on the safe. His tools clinked softly, each sound tightening the knot in my chest. Lucas sat nearby, flipping through the mortgage papers, his quiet focus a steady anchor. The safe's lock gave way with a dull thud, and Samuel stepped back, giving me space. I knelt, my hands steady but my heart racing, and opened it. Inside was a stack of cash, crisp and bundled, a folded deed, and a single letter in Nathan's handwriting. I unfolded the deed first, my eyes scanning the words. It was for a cabin an hour away, just like the ledger said. But the name on it wasn't mine. It was Elise's. My breath caught the paper, trembling in my hands. He'd bought it for her, not us. I opened the letter, my fingers clumsy. Nathan's words spilled out, explaining the cabin was meant to be a surprise for our future, a place to start over after his mistakes. He wrote about wanting to fix things, to rebuild what we'd lost. but the deed's name screamed louder than his words. He'd never changed it even after ending things with her. My stomach churned the cash in the safe, now feeling like blood money. Lucas looked up, his eyes soft but searching. I handed him the deed, my voice flat as I explained. He scanned it, his jaw tightening, and confirmed it was legally hers. The cabin Nathan's dreamed for us belonged to someone else. I felt hollow, like the ground had vanished beneath me. Samuel packed his tools, his silence respectful but heavy. I barely nodded as he left, my mind locked on the deed. Lucas stayed, pointing out a clause in the mortgage papers suggesting we could contest the cabin's ownership, but his words felt distant. The letter's promise of a fresh start mocked me. Nathan's love, his regret, all tangled in a truth I couldn't escape. Elise's name on that deed was a wall blocking any hope I'd clung to. I sat on the cold concrete, the letter in my lap, my chest tight with a grief I couldn't name, the world silent except for my shallow breaths. I noticed a small, worn sketchbook beside the safe, filled with Nathan's doodles of the cabin's layout, each line precise but unfinished. It was another piece of him I didn't know, another wound. Harper's dog barked outside, a sharp reminder of the world moving on, while I sat frozen, lost in the wreckage of his secrets. I stood, my legs unsteady, and walked to the garage door, the evening air cool. Harper was feeding her dog, her movements calm, and I envied her peace, my hands clutching the sketchbook, its pages a map to a life I'd never lived. A faint scent of rain lingered, and I noticed a small rusted compass on a shelf, one Nathan used on our hikes, its needle still pointing north, a direction I couldn't follow. I sat in my living room, the deed, and Nathan's letter on the coffee table, their presence like a bruise I couldn't stop pressing. Lucas had left, promising to dig deeper into the legal mess, but the quiet he left behind was suffocating. I heard tires crunch outside and looked up to see Marcus's truck, Karen, trailing behind him. He stormed in, his voice clipped, demanding to know why I'd stalled the sale. His eyes flicked to the open garage door too, knowing like he'd been waiting for this moment. I stood, my voice low but steady, and told him the sale was off until I sorted out Nathan's secrets. His jaw tightened, and he muttered something about the garage being more than it seemed. I asked what he meant, but he dodged, leaving with a curt nod. Karen lingered, her eyes soft, whispering she'd try to calm him down. I barely nodded, my focus back on the deed. Rachel arrived an hour later, her knock timid, unlike her usual boldness. She stepped inside, her eyes avoiding mine landing on the papers. I didn't speak, just watched her fidget. She started, her voice cracking, saying Nathan told her about the cabin last year, how it was his way to fix our marriage after his mistakes. She swore she kept quiet to spare me pain, her words tumbling out like a confession. I stared, my chest tight, her apology feeling like another betrayal. Why hadn't she told me? Her silence had let me build a life on lies. I didn't yell, just pointed to the door, my voice cold. She left, her footsteps fading, leaving me alone with the truth. I picked up Nathan's journal from the couch, flipping to a new page. Tucked inside was a photo not of Elise, but of Nathan and me years ago, standing outside a half-built cabin. We were smiling, his arm around me before everything unraveled. My throat closed, the memory sharp and cruel. Marcus's words echoed, hinting at something hidden in the garage. Rachel's confession, the photo, the deed in Elise's name, they pressed against me, heavy and unyielding. I sank into the couch, the photo slipping from my fingers, my heart a quiet ache, lost in a truth I couldn't unsee. I noticed a small faded postcard on the table, slipped from the journal, showing a lake near the cabin's address. Nathan had written on the back, "For our summers, a promise he never kept." I set it down, my hands heavy as Harper's laughter drifted from her yard, a stark contrast to the silence swallowing me. I walked to the window, the glass fogging under my breath, and saw Harper arranging flowers in a vase, her hands steady. Her quiet joy felt distant, but it planted a seed, a faint urge to keep searching, even as the postcard's promise weighed me down. I noticed a small leather-bound notebook on the table, one Nathan used for grocery lists, its pages filled with his tidy handwriting. I flipped through it, finding a single line, "Sadie deserves better." It stung, a truth he never spoke aloud, and I set it down, my resolve wavering but unbroken. I drove out to the cabin, the road winding through dense Ohio pines, the early morning air cool against my skin. The address from the deed led me here an hour from home to a small wooden structure tucked in a clearing. It was unfinished beams, exposed windows bare, but it felt like Nathan's handiwork, every nail a piece of him. I stepped inside my boots, echoing on the plank floor, and ran my fingers along a rough-hewn beam. Our initials carved years ago stared back, a quiet reminder of a time when love felt simple. My chest ached but softer now, like a bruise fading. The cabin smelled of cedar and damp earth. I wandered, finding a small fireplace, its stones uneven but sturdy. I pictured Nathan here, working alone, maybe dreaming of us. The thought didn't sting as much anymore. I sat on the floor, sunlight filtering through a gap in the roof, and let my mind wander. Lucas had texted, offering to come along, and I'd invited him. His truck pulled up, the engine's rumble soft in the stillness. He stepped inside, his eyes taking in the space, and smiled faintly, saying it had potential. I nodded, my voice quiet, and asked about his own healing, how he'd forgiven his dad for those hidden debts. His answer was simple: time, and choosing to see the good. We walked outside the forest, humming with distant birds. Lucas pointed out a hidden nook near the porch, a small carved box tucked into the wall. I pried it open, my hands steady, and found a silver locket inside its clasp, worn but delicate. I clicked it open, revealing our wedding photo, my younger self beaming beside Nathan. My breath caught, not from pain, but from a strange peace. He'd meant this for me, even after everything. I held the locket, its weight grounding me, and looked out at the trees, their branches swaying gently, my heart settling into a quiet I hadn't felt in months. I noticed a small stream nearby, its water gurgling softly, and walked to it, dipping my fingers in the cold flow. It felt like a baptism, a moment to let go. Lucas joined me, tossing a pebble into the water, its ripples spreading wide. He spoke of his mother, how she'd taught him to find peace in small things like this stream. His words wove into my silence, a gentle push toward healing. I glanced at the cabin's porch, noticing a weathered bench Nathan must have built, its wood splintered but strong. I sat on it, the locket still in my hand, and felt the forest's quiet wrap around me, a soft promise of something new. A squirrel darted across the clearing, its movements quick and sure, and I watched it, feeling a flicker of lightness, a sign I was ready to move forward. Back in the garage, I stood among the now organized shelves. The chaos of Nathan's secrets tidied into neat stacks. The air felt lighter, the oil scent fainter. I decided to keep the cabin, to finish it myself, not for him, but for the woman I was becoming. I traced my fingers over a toolbox, its lid scratched from years of use. Inside, tucked under a pile of screws, was a folded note in Nathan's handwriting. "For my love to build our dreams," it read. My eyes stung, but I didn't cry. The words were his, but the dreams were mine now. Rachel called, her voice soft, asking to talk. I invited her over, my tone calm. She arrived, her eyes red, and we sat on the garage steps. She apologized again, her words raw, saying she'd been scared to lose me too. I listened, my anger gone, replaced by a quiet understanding. We'd both loved him, flaws and all. I forgave her, my voice steady, and we hugged, the weight between us lifting. Karen stopped by later, her smile warm, offering to help with the mortgage paperwork. She'd become a friend, her own story of loss weaving into mine. I walked back inside, picking up the toolbox note again. It felt like a promise, not from Nathan, but to myself. I'd build something new, piece by piece. The garage, once a locked mystery, was just a space now filled with tools I'd learned to use. I stepped outside, the evening sky soft with pink, and closed the door behind me, my heart still, my breath even ready to carry on. I noticed Harper across the street, her porch light glowing a small beacon in the dusk. She waved, and I raised a hand, feeling a thread of connection. I found a small hand-carved bird in the toolbox, one Nathan must have made, its wings delicate. I set it on the windowsill, a quiet nod to what was and what I'd make of it. The evening breeze carried the scent of Harper's roses, and I stood there, the bird's silhouette against the fading light, feeling a new strength settle in my bones. I noticed a small hand-painted stone in the garden one Harper had given me weeks ago, its surface smooth and warm. I held it its weight, a quiet reminder of the community I was building step by step. 6 months later, I stood on the cabin's porch, my hands calloused from sanding the new swing I'd built. The forest hummed around me, leaves rustling in the late summer breeze. The cabin was taking shape, its walls now painted a soft gray, the roof patched. I'd spent weekends here hammering nails, learning from online videos, my muscles aching but my heart steady. This place wasn't Nathan's anymore. It was mine, a space I'd claimed through sweat and stubborn will. I hung a small wind chime by the door, its gentle clink a sound I chose for myself. I'd settled the mortgage, a small inheritance from my aunt covering the debt Nathan left. The house was safe, the garage no longer a locked vault, but a workshop where I'd started fixing things like the old lamp we'd bought at a flea market years ago. I invited Rachel and Lucas over tonight, their laughter now a new rhythm in my life. Rachel arrived first, carrying a homemade pie, her smile tentative but warm. We sat inside the fireplace crackling, and she talked about her own steps forward, how she'd started therapy to face her guilt. I listened, my hands wrapped around a mug, feeling the weight of our shared healing. Lucas pulled up his truck loaded with firewood. He'd been here often helping with the cabin, his quiet jokes easing the long days. We stepped outside, the air cool, and stacked the wood by the porch. He didn't ask about Nathan, just shared a story about rebuilding his own life after loss. His words settled into me like stones in a river, smoothing my edges. I looked at the cabin, its windows glowing softly, and felt a stillness I hadn't known in years. The pain wasn't gone, but it didn't own me anymore. I breathed deep, the forest air filling my lungs, ready to sit with what came next. I noticed a small flower bed by the cabin, wildflowers I'd planted last month, their blooms just starting to open. I knelt, touching their petals, feeling their fragility and strength. Harper's voice echoed in my mind, her talk of gardening as healing, and I smiled, my hands in the dirt, grounded. I walked back to the porch, noticing a small hand-painted sign I'd made reading hope nailed above the door. It was my word, my choice, a quiet declaration of the life I was building. A neighbor, Caleb, drove by, waving from his truck, his smile brief but kind. I waved back, feeling a quiet connection, the cabin's warmth behind me. We sat around the cabin's new oak table, the pie half-eaten crumbs scattered like small victories. Karen joined us, her presence a quiet comfort, her laughter blending with ours. She leaned in, her voice soft, sharing how my choice to keep the cabin inspired her to face her own past, to sell her brother's old car, and let go. Her words landed gently, a mirror to my own path. I looked around at Rachel's tentative smile, Lucas's steady gaze, the warm glow of the lantern above us. This wasn't the life I'd planned with Nathan, but it was one I was building, one nail, one choice at a time. I hung the locket I'd found on a hook by the fireplace, its silver catching the light. It wasn't about erasing Nathan's mistakes, but about carrying them lightly, letting them teach me instead of break me. I stepped outside alone, the night sky clear, stars sharp against the dark. My hands rested on the porch rail, the wood smooth under my palms. I'd spent months unraveling Nathan's secrets, each one a cut, but they'd led me here to a place where I could breathe again. The lesson wasn't grand or tidy. Pain, I learned, is a brutal teacher, stripping away illusions but leaving room for truth. Forgiving Nathan, Rachel, even myself, didn't mean forgetting. It meant choosing to build anyway, to find strength in the cracks. I wasn't whole, but I was enough. The wind chime clinked softly, a sound that felt like mine, and I stood there, still letting the quiet hold me. What's a moment that forced you to face a hard truth, but made you stronger? Share it below. I'd love to hear your story. If this resonated, tap that like button, subscribe for more, or share it with someone who needs it. Thank you for listening, for being here. Here's to finding peace in our own way, one step at a time.